You have to understand that people don't naturally want to buy your product. They don't want to listen to your music. They don't want to read your books. They're not interested in you. How do you seduce them into doing that is the name of the game.
Robert Greene is the mastermind behind 48 Laws of Power, one of the most controversial and influential strategy books ever written. His frameworks have shaped how top executives and entrepreneurs think about power and strategy.
Human behavior is compulsive and obsessive. You might think that analytics, data is going to drive your company. That's certainly a part of it, but the social aspect is equally, if not more important.
In this episode, Robert breaks down the psychological mind games that determine who wins and loses in business.
If you can't control your own mouth, then what can you control? You can't control your emotions. You can't control your behavior. It signals weakness and insecurity.
We dive into the art of strategic thinking, why most people completely misunderstand power, and the mental models you need to position yourself for success.
This is the most important law that I want you to engrave in your brain right now as you listen to it.
What's up, guys? It's Mark. Quick break. Over 80% of you guys listening are not subscribers. The more subscribers we get, the bigger and better we can make the show. It would mean the world to me if you got value from this episode or any of the past episodes to hit the subscribe button below. Thanks for watching. In power and business, is honesty really the path to success?
Well, I hate talking in generalities, so let's bring it down to the earth here and get it more practical. There are moments when you do want to be honest, particularly with your own team, sometimes, not always. So the leader of a group has to have a vision. It's extremely important. It's what I talk about in the War book and all of my books. You have to be the one, if it's you we're talking about, Mark, that sees the future, that knows where the company is, that know what the brand is. You're in control. You have this vision. And you have to communicate that vision very directly and very honestly to your team. They have to understand, they have to be on the same page. So a degree of transparency where they know what you want, what you desire is very important. If you're always concealing the intentions from your team, then you're going to create chaos within your organization. It's not going to work. Of course, there are times when you don't want them to know exactly what you're up to. That's why, people don't understand my books so well. They're so linear-minded. Conceal your intentions. Oh, I've got to conceal my intentions. The game of power is subtle. Human beings are subtle. They're complex, okay? So sometimes, even when you're the head of a group, there are going to be moments where you want to keep people off balance. You don't want the members of your team to know exactly what you're up, exactly what you're thinking, exactly where you're going, because then they're just going to be they're not going to be using their own initiative. They're not going to be imaginative. I talk in the War book about Napoleon Bonaparte being kind of the master of in warfare they call man management, motivation. And he would mix punishment and kindness. So most of the time he was kind to his soldiers, right? But occasionally he would be very mean and cruel, and he would pick on people randomly to keep them on their heels so they didn't feel, wow, I can just do whatever I want because Napoleon likes me and he's on my side, etc. There's another law in there about using unpredictability to keep people in suspended terror. So they don't know exactly what you want, so they have to try harder. You have to try harder to please you because they're not quite sure whether you like them or not, whether you find their work sufficient or not. But where you really want to conceal your intentions is with your rivals, with your opponents, with your enemies. So in warfare, it's very obvious. It's very obvious in politics, but it's also very clear in business. If everybody of all the companies that are your rivals, if they know exactly where you're headed, they're going to try and take over what you're doing. They're going to mimic you. They're going to mirror you. They know exactly where you're headed. You're too predictable. So really, where you really want to conceal your intentions is for those people who are not on your side, right? There's no purpose for other people knowing who are not on your team for knowing what you're intending to do a year from now, a month from now, a week from now. There's no good in that, right? So maybe your customers, your clients have a good sense of the brand, but you want to keep your enemies, your rivals completely on their heels, completely on the defense. You're on the offense.
We were just talking off camera about the law of interaction with boldness. So contextually, to be, it's obviously nuanced. don't conceal your intentions internally to your team, conceal them externally.
Yeah.
And then when you want to go, you have to go big and bold.
Yeah. A lot of power is thinking ahead, 2 or 3 moves ahead. And in the concealing intentions law, I talk about Otto Bismarck, the German chancellor, who was a master. He was playing that kind of game, that kind of chess on the political chessboard of Europe at the time. He was thinking several moves in advance. And in order to think several moves in advance, you know what your intentions are. You know where you're going to go in 6 months, right? And so you have to have a vision of where you're headed, but you have to keep everybody else in the dark so that they can't predict what's happening next. So part of concealing intentions, part of business, part of power is the ability to think strategically, to think in advance, to think several moves in advance. And that means having intentions, having moves that you've planned out, but you want to keep other people on their heels. They don't know where you're going to go next.
Yeah, a big law you talk about is planning to the end. And you also touched on saying less than necessary. I see that with the most powerful leaders. They often say less. Just how does silence itself become leverage?
Well, I remember I did a book with 50 Cent called The 50th Law. And 50, I met him because he's a big fan of the 48 Laws of Power, right? It's like his Bible. And I remember for that book, I went to a lot of meetings with him. I was kind of hanging out with him. And he would always tell me, Robert, watch me in a meeting. I'll say very little, but everybody will have their eyes on me, right? Because when you talk, then they kind of know who you are and they start to almost disregard you. But when you're silent, particularly someone like him, why is 50 not reacting to what I'm talking about? Why isn't he saying he loves my ideas? What's he thinking? What's going on in his head? When you make other people think about what's going on in your head, you're the one in control of the situation. Whereas if they know everything that you're thinking, everything that you're doing, then they have power. They have power over you. So I would see him in a meeting and he would sit there all quiet and everybody else would be freaking out. So to sum it up, it's an aura of power. Business is very matter of fact, but it's also pure psychology, right? You've got to understand the psychology behind power. And I don't know what you're thinking right now, Mark. It's appearances, right? You could be wearing a mask. You're smiling right now, but you're smiling. You might not really be smiling. You might be kind of uncomfortable. You may not like me or something like that. I don't know. You're wearing a mask. So power is about appearances. And there's weakness, things that show weakness. And in my book, The Laws of Human Nature, I talk about the weak body language, the weak signs that people can kind of feed off of you. They smell it. Then there are powerful things. And you want to create this aura of power, even though inside you might not feel so powerful or feel so comfortable or secure. But outwardly, you want to show this appearance that makes people think, wow, this guy, he's authority. I respect him. Talking less creates an aura of power. It makes you look larger than you actually are. It makes people think he's mysterious. He or she's mysterious. When you talk a lot, I don't know if you've noticed this, but people who talk a lot, there's something insecure about them. If you can't control your own mouth, if you can't control that, then what can you control? You can't control your emotions. You can't control your behavior. It signals weakness and insecurity. Whereas talking less, you're not going to say something stupid. And then when you do speak, it's going to carry a lot of weight. So it seems like an unimportant law. Oh, always talk less than speak less than necessary. But it's actually extremely important to understand the psychology of what gives the appearance, the aura of power, and what doesn't.
So are you basically recommending people that almost like transparency and authenticity is overrated? You should say less, be disciplined in nature, and every word that comes out of your mouth needs to be strategic in nature.
I mean, down to the baseline of every human being, we're all actors. Some are good actors, some act more, some are bad actors. But I always tell people, if you look at children, 3 or 4 years old, or you remember your own childhood, you were constantly pretending, you were constantly acting to your parents. You would act like an angel to get something that you wanted. You'd act all sweet and innocent because you wanted some candy, you wanted some game. Being an actor is part of human nature. It's deeply, deeply ingrained in all of us because we're a social animal. If you went around just speaking everything that you thought, you would offend everyone around you, right? If you told somebody that their clothes are ugly, that they look fat, that their ideas are stupid, they're going to hate you. You're not going to get very far in life. So you learn at an early age to control what you say, to control who you are, to control what you do. Think about your life, Mark. When you are interacting with Michael Jordan, you have a certain way of behaving around him, right? You're probably a little bit intimidated, probably don't speak as much, probably don't. But when you're around one of your other employees who just joined, you're completely different. You're acting. You're not the same person in front of Michael Jordan as you are in front of your 21-year-old new employee. That is acting. That's how we all are. We're different in front of our father than we are with our friends, right? So get over this notion that we can all just hang out and just be who we are. You're never being who you are. You're always acting to some degree.
You're really touching on the formlessness law, which is really that malleability and adaptability based on a per situation perspective. Can somebody win in business and life if they're not malleable to the situation?
Well, let me explain to you the idea a little bit behind formlessness first, okay? So a lot of that comes from Sun Tzu, very obviously. It's an Asian idea about being kind of water and being fluid in life. But it's also an idea that for me came very much from Machiavelli. And I've noticed this with a lot of business leaders. I noticed it when I was on the board of directors of American Apparel and with the CEO, Dov Charney. And what Machiavelli talks about is people rise to power. They become a CEO, they become a leader, they become a president or whatever, based on certain qualities that they have, a strength. It could be aggression. It could be being a people pleaser, being just very empathetic. It could be having a populist touch. It could be good with words, an orator. That's their strength. They use that and they get a lot of power because they're good at it. They don't have to think about it. It's almost natural to them. They get to a position of power, and now the times are changing because things are always changing, particularly nowadays, where things change month by month, right? Trends are changing. Young people are coming up. Tastes are changing. The world is changing. Your rivals are changing. The business world is changing. And you're still holding on to that one quality that brought you to the top. You're still thinking that my aggression or that my being popular and pleasing everybody or my speaking well, and you keep holding on to that, and the world has passed you by and you're weak. And Machiavelli said, if I could create the monster, the Frankenstein of a leader in business or politics, whatever, it would be somebody who could change with the times, who they rose to power based on a strength. They see that it's not quite the right quality, and they adapt and they move with the times. He compared it to a river, right? And you're kind of moving like the water, you're flowing with this river, and that's power. But being rigid and having a form and having a strategy that you always rely on and having a personality that you always exude to the world and perform as is weak because you can't adapt. I mean, think of your business in the last 3 years. Can you begin to imagine all the incredible shifts that have occurred in just that time?
My business has completely changed in 3 years. I would say every single year it's a new business.
Yeah.
I think a key thing to understand and know there too is like you have to, I wouldn't say detach feelings, but you have to detach your ego and just have a completely open mind, or else you're going to lose now more so than ever with what's going on with the world.
Right.
Yeah. And I would say experimentation is another big one.
You bring up a good point. Ego is definitely a part of that. You're holding on to the past because that's what brought you success. That's who you think you are. To change yourself, to become fluid, to be something different, means you have to let go of the past. You have to let go of your ego. So that's a very important quality.
Do you think leaders can be too kind of fluid in formlessness, or will they lose their identity? What needs to stay? Is it just the vision and then just be malleable and all the other tactics tied to it?
Well, it's a delicate game. As I tried to say in the beginning, don't think of power as these are these set laws that I have to follow. It's got to be this way. It's got to be A or B or C. Open your mind up. Don't be so rigid about it. So sometimes you have to be consistent, right? That's your brand. If you're certainly changing your brand every 6 months, people don't know who you are, don't know what it's about. You're going to lose your customers, your clients, right? But if you're too stuck, if you're too always the same, people are going to be bored with you. So the game in 2025 and moving forward has a lot to do with attention. People have written about this, but attention is money. Attention is something that you can monetize, right? Being able to get the attention in a world where you're competing with billions of other people out there, right? Okay. And so in order to gain people's attention, people get very bored, right? They get very bored very quickly if you're always the same, if you always have one note.
Yeah, I think in business and in life, complacency is the most dangerous drug. And in order to keep a momentum, I think consistency is one thing, but you have to stay interesting.
Yeah.
And an example with me is just, I've always been known as like a business and an operator. And now I could tell people in my network are kind of shaken up. They're now like, are you a content creator? Are you a podcaster? And I think that was a necessary shakeup because it was getting kind of old with what I was doing. I needed something new and fresh.
Yeah. I mean, I've always believed this. It's been kind of an instinct of mine. And so I wrote the 48 Laws of Power, and it was it was successful. It's gone much more popular since the first couple of years, but it was quite successful. And I could have easily made my second book, The 48 Laws of Power, Part 2. People wanted me to do that. They wanted me to go further into it. But I never, ever, 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 ever want to be predictable. I don't want anybody to ever think what my next book will be. So I go to Seduction, which is quite a change from Power. And then I go to War, which is a little bit similar to Power, but it's also different. Then I go to book with 50 Cent. Then I go to Mastery, which has nothing to do with the other books, which is all about your brain, how to master your field. Then I do the Human Nature. And now I'm doing a book on the Sublime. So I want to stay one step ahead of people. I never want them to think, oh, I know what Robert's about. I know what his next book's going to be. I know what his laws are. He's very predictable. I'm never going to go in the direction that people expect me to go in.
I think like a halo that goes over the whole entire book and directly correlates to all of the laws, especially the guard your reputation at all costs, is the ability to reinvent yourself. You keep iterating in and around that. What are the key kind of strategies and initiatives should you do for the marketplace to see you differently?
So to give you an example, I was on the board of directors of American Apparel, right? And American Apparel was incredibly successful, right? Up until the turning point was the year 2007, when we went public and we had to assume massive amounts of debt. And then there was the crash in 2008. And suddenly our debt was crushing, right? And we never recovered from it. But the point I'm getting at is Dove created a brand that was all based on the early 80s and the mid 80s, kind of sexy, tight clothes, kind of the workout, the Jane Fonda mentality. He was a child of the 80s. He was sort of stuck in that era. And it worked. It was brilliant. People loved it. But I could already sense in the year 2009, this was a company that was mostly selling to young girls, to young women. Their tastes were changing. That kind of sexy look and whole approach, it was starting to become passé. And I was telling Dove, you've got to shift it a little bit. You've got to shift with the times. Things are changing right now. People aren't so much looking into the early 80s. They're thinking it differently. Let's come up with a different line of clothing, or let's reflect that more. Now, I'm not saying I knew exactly the answer, but my point to him was, I think you're in the danger of becoming passé. The worst thing that can happen to anybody in business, that suddenly the public perceives you as being 2 or 3 or 5 years behind the times. That's deadly. It's okay to appear 50 years behind the times. That's nostalgic. That's interesting. But 4 or 5 years behind the time, that's deadly. That's the kind of strategic thinking I'm talking about. All right? where you've got a brand, you're known for a certain thing, and times are changing. Maybe you have to shift that, knowing how times are going. I mean, we could talk about people like Elon Musk, who's got a very powerful image, consistent brand for who he is, right? But then sometimes it can get predictable. It can get like, he's always in your face. He's always, he takes boldness to the nth degree. So maybe somebody like that, if he shifted a little bit, and sometimes I've seen signs of that potentiality, and he showed a little slightly different side to him, I think it would help him a lot, because right now he seems powerful, but he's also getting a little bit predictable, and maybe his public image, I think, is going to suffer from that.
Yeah, I feel like it's just as simple as just showing like his softer side and his family. And I completely agree. He's very stiff and hard and against what's going on with the current regime. It would take something very small to, I think, completely shift the complete public perception.
Yeah.
Going deeper into that, is there a world where you can actually chase too much attention? Is it about just getting as much attention as possible?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't want to keep name dropping here, so please excuse me. But I was approached by a well-known female rapper, Saweetie, okay? And
that's a good name drop. I like that.
Okay. And she asked me, Robert, you have some of the laws that are about mystery, appearing mysterious, creating an aura of mystery, using absence to create honor and respect. How do you do that in the era of social media, where it's all about grabbing as much attention as possible? How can you withdraw? How can you be mysterious? And I said, well, look, people are very bored right now. They're like children who've been continually stimulated with all kinds of new and exciting new toys, right? And you're vying for their attention, okay? If you're always the same, if you're always doing the same, if you're always appearing the same, they're going to get bored with you, and they're going to look for something else. So you have to be mysterious. You have to withdraw. If you withdraw and you're not always vying for their attention, you disappear for a month. You don't post anything, or you post something that's maybe a little bit enigmatic where they're not quite sure what you mean. Suddenly they're going to pay attention to you. I talk about this about certain musicians, like Michael Jackson was very good about that. Part of it was his personality, but he would withdraw. People don't understand Michael Jackson was a real kind of power person. He really is interested in the game of power. In fact, I've said this before in other podcasts, he had the 48 Laws of Power. And when he died, they auctioned his copy of the book, and it had all of these notes in it. He had annotated it completely with his own notes. So he was very interested. But before the book came out, he understood the game of power. And he understood sometimes you have to withdraw. Sometimes you have to be one of those movie stars like Greta Garbo who disappears for 6 months, a year, or 2 years. People start thinking, what's he up to next? When's his next album going to be out? What's it going to be about? Even Beyonce plays the game like that. So the people, these are artists, so it's a little easier. But the game is to sometimes withdraw from that attention cycle. We are always having to be something for other people. Let's take a step back and let them start wondering what happened to you. Disappear for a while. You have to know the game of absence and presence. Sometimes you have to be absent and sometimes you have to be present. Napoleon Bonaparte said, if I show up at the theater every evening as a spectator, the audience sees me, they start taking me for granted. But if I show up a month later, they go, oh, there's Napoleon, wow. Then I show up the next week, oh, he's coming off. And then I show up in 6 months. They don't know when I'm going to show up next, so they're always having to think about him. So that's sort of the game a little bit, knowing how to, this dynamic between absence and presence.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, with increasing the honor through the absence. Putting aside kind of being strategic and when you come and go, at general face value, do you think it's better to be attacked and slandered or ignored completely?
Better to be attacked and slandered.
Better to be attacked and slandered.
Definitely.
So you're under the notion of any press is good press in that sense.
Definitely. Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, look, the 48 Laws of Power, when it came out, was very controversial because honestly, it's got an edge to it, a moral edge. There are laws in it that are a little bit frightening to some people, you know. And that controversy, that edge, people hating it, is what created an aura of it. So controversy. Now, scandal is something else because that could play against you, particularly if it's a scandal for a certain thing, for what, certain subjects, certain scandalous acts. But controversy is incredibly powerful, right? Because it makes people think about you. So sometimes I get so annoyed because everything now is so politically correct. We've all got to appear to be these saints. We always have to have this kind of virtue signaling, right? But it's not real. It's not true. It's not who we are because we all have a dark side. I talked in several podcasts about Kobe Bryant, who we were talking about earlier. Kobe had a dark side, and you could see it in his game, and it's what attracted to it. It's what made him a great player. Okay? You have a dark side, I have a dark side. So we're all attracted to people who show a little bit of it, who show a little bit of that dark side, that little bit of controversy, who are not so predictable, who are not so sweet and angelic. So controversy is extremely powerful in the power game.
And as far as that goes, I feel like it's similar in business where as long as it's not fatal, it actually builds your lore. Like when Kobe went through the whole entire case in Colorado a long time ago, whether guilty or not guilty, that just built up this new storyline that kept him in the media. And then it was a bigger and greater arc when he obviously recovered from it, became a great family man, and now he was looked at under that light. So you go really, really deep into how important reputation is. Under the notion we're talking about attention, good attention, bad attention. If your reputation gets quote unquote ruined, can that be something that could be built back?
Of course. I've had dealings with that with people who've come to me about that very thing. So there are times when you need to apologize, and the apology has to be sincere, and it has to be not the usual thing where I don't know what came over me, that's not who I am, that just happened once. No, you acknowledge that you made a mistake, right? That you did something wrong, and you show genuine contrition. And then, a lot of people who were canceled 6 years ago, that's when they were contacting me, or 8 years ago. And I said, show that you're contrition, understand why people reacted against you, give it a little bit of time, and then come back with more or less the same image, but, understanding there are kind of guardrails here. I thought, for instance, watching Jimmy Kimmel last night and his monologue, that's not quite the same thing because it was just like 4 days or so that he was canceled. And it was a scandal, but it wasn't like a huge scandal. But I thought how he handled it was really, really good. He was apologetic. He understood why it was taken the wrong way, but he wasn't this craven coward who was just saying, oh, I'm so sorry for everything I did. I'm not going to behave like that anymore. Because that doesn't seem authentic. That doesn't seem genuine.
And he positions himself with strength that he apologized, but at the same time, this is who I am. I'm not going to change for the
But he also acknowledged the wife of Charlie Kirk, and he said that she did it very gracefully. He said, it's terrible that this young man was murdered. And his own wife, forgave the assassin. Incredible thing. He acknowledged that. And yet at the same time, he then was being more or less himself. He wasn't going to change who he was. That was a very powerful way of handling that kind of scandal.
In relation to reputation, in 2025, do you think reputation is more important than capital?
Reputation is capital. So to give you an example, I look at Elon Musk, for instance, okay? And I look at the early years of Tesla. Now, anybody who studies the manufacture of automobile business knows that to start a new automobile company is extremely precarious. The amount of capital that you need to start up with the factories, with the overhead, with the materials, from getting parts from all over the world is enormous. It's why nobody starts from scratch an automobile company, which he did, okay? Now, his cars were well built, they were interesting, but what he did was his reputation, his boldness, he was on Twitter at the time, saying all of these different things. He was always in the news with very bold pronouncements. People loved him. This is before his more recent iteration. They were excited about him. His reputation meant people would now, when he went public, people were investing in it based on his reputation, not based on Tesla, not based on the actual cars that he was producing, not based on knowledge of the business, of the finance of Tesla, which was actually in the hole, which was actually deeply in debt, based on his reputation as a maverick, as somebody inventive, as somebody who was interesting and innovative, a true pioneer spirit. Money poured in, investment money poured in to the publicly traded company, which then turned into capital that he could now use to build this company and build the cars. His reputation in that case was capital.
I think in his case too, it was reputation combined with attention. His ability to garner the attention in conjunction with his reputation is what did it for him. Guys, quick 60-second break. I am so excited to announce our first partnership. It is the perfect fit for me and what I believe in, and more importantly, you, the audience. I have personally spent tens of millions of dollars on meta ads. At one point, it made up 95% of my entire marketing budget. That kind of platform dependency is a real risk. One algorithm shift and your whole entire business can stall. This is why I partnered with Universal Ads, the CTV ad platform powered by the biggest names in TV, built for any size business. In under 5 minutes, you can advertise across the best shows on NBC, Paramount, Roku, and more. You can reach up to 90% of the households in the US at social media CPMs. And the platform gives you full control. You can target by viewership, behavior, income, geography, custom audiences, and more. Just like you guys are used to seeing on social. I'm giving out $500 in ad credits with my referral code to the first 50 people who fill out the form below. First come, first serve, it's gonna go fast. And if you're spending over $300K a month on paid, I have something special for you. Everything's in the description below. Go diversify now and appreciate the support. What is the right way to package wins so that people above you feel ownership instead of feeling threatened?
You mean never outshine the master?
Yes, sir.
So it says never outshine the master. You know, maybe it should be usually don't outshine the master, but that wouldn't have sounded so good. So you have to understand that the person above you has an ego and has probably a bigger ego than you do, obviously, because they're powerful. But with an ego comes insecurities, okay? So you must be aware that the person above you has insecurities and probably has more than you do because they're constantly worried, do people still like me? Am I still doing as well? Am I as popular as I was a year ago? Am I getting as much attention as I deserve? Am I doing a good job? He or she is very insecure. They're thinking about these things all the time. So what happens is if you try too eagerly to impress them and you do such a good job on some project or something, and then all the attention accrues to you for doing that, then you're going to trigger their insecurities. Wow, this person's getting the attention and not me. Maybe they're after my job. Maybe they're more popular than I am. They're not going to consciously think this because they don't want to admit that they're insecure. But unconsciously, they're worried about you. They're thinking things that maybe you're a threat, right? And slowly they're going to build up kind of resentment towards you. And what will happen is you'll probably be fired or you'll be demoted. So if you work hard on a project for somebody else from somebody higher up in your group and you do a great job, you need to tone it down a little bit. Don't take so much credit. Let them bask a little bit in the glory. Let them have the attention. Yes, they're the genius behind the project. I was just executing their desires. That makes them suddenly go, wow, this person, you understand that they did a great job, but they're being a little bit humble. They're giving you the attention, which you deserve anyway because you think you do, okay? But if you're too weak about it, if you're too humble, if you're going, oh, you don't take credit at all, you weren't involved in it at all, that makes you look weak, right? So you have to be kind of nuanced. You have to do a good job. You have to try really hard. You have to do the best that you can, but you got to let the person above you take some of the credit, take some of the glory. Otherwise, they're going to be wondering about you. They're going to be thinking that you think that you're better than them, and you're going to trigger their insecurities. This is the most important law in power that I want you to engrave in your brain right now as you listen to me. And it's the following. Everybody has insecurities and has an ego. And the worst thing you can do for your boss, for your colleagues, for the people underneath you is to violate their ego, to make them feel insecure. You will pay a price for it. They will resent you. They will work against you. They will betray you in the end. So never lose sight that everybody around you has an ego and has insecurities.
If you're thinking about going upstream, you're an employee with your boss. In short, kind of do good, do your work, selectively compliment them. But then on the flip side, the boss, you recommend have everybody do the work for you, but then take credit.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to expand on that. What's your thoughts with that?
So the law came from, I worked in Hollywood unfortunately, for like 10 years. It kind of inspired the 48 Laws. I say unfortunately because I hated Hollywood. But I would work for a film director who would be doing a screenplay. And I would write large portions of the dialogue and I would contribute to it. Nobody ever knew that. It was always his name on it, right? He got all the fame, all the glory, all the attention. And at the time, it kind of bothered me. I was kind of resentful. And then when I wrote the 48 Laws of Power, I had this idea that, Robert, you did the wrong thing. You were stupid. The game of power should have been, that's how things are, right? When you look at a politician who gives a great speech and everybody's going, wow, Barack Obama, that was an amazing speech.
Someone wrote that speech.
Somebody wrote it. He never wrote it. And you never know that name who wrote it. You might, but no one ever gets that attention. When you see some journalist giving some really interesting monologue on television, somebody else wrote that, did all the research and gave them all the notes for that. Comedians. Bill Maher doesn't write his material. He's got a team of people writing all the jokes, right? You never see them. You never know them. Maybe the credits roll by really quickly, right? So that's how powerful people operate, okay? And I should have just accepted it. I should have been more humble. I should have said, that's how the jungle is. There are people who take the credit for it. And if I didn't resent it, I wouldn't have lost energy. If you get too worked up about things, if everything is so dramatic, if you're emotional, if you're reacting against everything, it drains you of energy. It clouds your mind. You're not a good strategist. You're not a good warrior in life. You're not a good power player because your brain is just sinking into this mud of reactions and emotions. So I should have just been more zen about it. This is how the game is. Eventually, if I keep writing this good dialogue and stuff, he's going to let me take credit, or I will get credit for it eventually. If I'm humble, if I'm serious, if I learn the game, if I play it right. If you play the game of power right, you read the book, you understand it, you will be rewarded at the end of the game, right? You will be rewarded. So I wrote that chapter because people in power use that and know about it, but also for you, the person starting out or who's younger, to understand that that's what's going to be happening to you. People are going to be taking your work and taking credit for it, but just accept that.
How much of avoiding outshining the master is really just about knowing who you're dealing with? It seems like it's very contextual to who the actual master or boss is.
Yes, it is, and it's nuanced. And some people, if you work really hard, you do a great job, and you get attention for it, they won't mind. Your boss will be fine. They'll be happy for you. There'll be no resentment. There'll be no pettiness. There'll be no envy. Great if you have a boss like that. But do you want me to tell you the percentage of bosses who will be like that? It's probably about 5%. Okay? I'm just throwing that number up. That's what I think, right? But if that's who your boss is, fantastic. Wunderbar. Love it. Go for it. But the chances are that they're probably not. So law number one is understand that probably they're insecure. Probably you're going to trigger their egos and be a little bit careful. But understand as well, what are their insecurities? What is going to trigger that? So to give you an example from my own life, because I violated this law once, I worked for an awful, awful television show back in the 90s, whose name I won't even mention. I was a researcher for it, okay? And I was the best researcher on this crap show. And best researcher meant that the stories I found were the ones that were most used. I had a higher percentage, right? Kind of went to my head. Wow, I'm hot shit, you know? I'm by far the best researcher on this crew. And I had a boss, a woman, and she ended up thinking I had an attitude. Like, Robert just thinks he's so great, okay? And one day we had a meeting, and I hated these meetings because they were such bullshit. Nothing is accomplished, just people talking. It's just political crap. That's how I felt. So I was kind of like doodling in my notebook. I wasn't listening. She goes, Robert, is something wrong here? Do you think you're better than everybody else? Ended up, she started really harassing me after that. Not sexually or anything. She started harassing me, my job, right? And eventually I just quit because I couldn't handle it anymore. I was sick of it. I hated the job. I hated her. And I hated all the politicking that was involved. Shouldn't life be about doing the best job, getting the best stories? Isn't that what matters? No, that's not what matters in business or politics. What matters is pleasing people, stroking their egos. I triggered her insecurity, which was she didn't feel like she was in authority. She didn't feel like I respected her. That was her weakness. If I understood that, maybe I would have played it differently, but I wouldn't have played it differently because I wanted to quit that job anyway.
That's discovering that thumbscrew, what the weaknesses and the motives and the things that make people tick and act differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to know that initially. I think for Outshine the Master, it's very upstream. It's bosses to investors, employees to bosses. A really, really interesting. Let's call it the 49th law of power here, actually.
There is no 49.
This is a good one. I think you're going to agree with it. It's new, and I've heard it. My buddy Simon Molnar, he's actually next on the podcast. He was a part of Afterpay. His brother was the founder.
Afterpay?
Afterpay.
Afterpay. Oh, sorry.
And so if you buy something for $100 online, I'll say spend 25 in installments. And I go, he was a billionaire in his late 20s. And I asked him, what was his superpower? What was his moat? And he said he had the ability, we're talking downstream now, that as the boss, even if it was his ideas, if his employees repackaged it or came to them with the ideas, he would make those employees feel as though it was their idea. And he said that empowered them in a whole different way. And ultimately, he had his own motive. He was planning to the end himself. And he felt that psychologically put them in a place where the work they did was valuable. I had never heard anything like that. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And it's kind of a riff on Outshine the Master upstream. This is kind of downstream.
Well, I'm all fine for people who do it differently from my laws because, as I said, no law is set in stone, and sometimes you need to do the opposite. But I would like to see the actual results from this. So a danger in that kind of approach is that people get complacent. They think, God, this boss is kind of weak. He's giving me credit for all these things. I actually, I did some of the work on it, but really it was his idea. And now your respect for him is just a little bit less. You're not admitting it. And so you're not emboldened to work as hard. You might think that it's the opposite, and he might think it's the opposite, and it might be the opposite, and I could be very wrong. But it could also be that people think, I don't have to do very much to get his approval. Whereas if it's the opposite, and he takes most of the credit, but you get a little bit of it, that little bit of it makes you feel good, and it makes you want to try harder the next time.
I feel like you almost have to be nice, but not too nice. That's kind of where you're at.
That's what I believe. Now, you're this man for Afterpay. I'm sure he's brilliant, and I'm sure he knows more than I do about his company, and I'm sure he played it right. So I'm not contradicting him. But I don't know if it's a model for other people out there because I think there's a slight danger to it.
We'll make sure we ask him on the next podcast.
Yeah.
I want to go off to Law 40, despise the free lunch. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
My friends call me Barter Simpson. I've talked about it before. I barter a lot of things and do free both ways. It's something that I need to stop. So I guess let's just start with, why is free so often the most expensive mistake in business?
Well, I tell you, a lot of times, so people often want to work for me. They offer their services. They say, Robert, you don't need to pay me. Okay, I'll work for free. All right. And the idea is nothing ever comes free in this world. Nobody ever gives you something free. Now, there is an exception to that. Your mother probably loved you. Not always, probably loved you, not expecting anything in return, but usually, even mothers do expect something in return. So even their love is not often totally free. But nobody gives you anything for free. They're wanting something in return. And it's a trick where they're thinking that If they offer their services for free, you're going to go, okay, that's great. And you're not going to pay attention to the fact that they're after something else from you, right? And so it's always better to pay people and pay them well for their services. So if you're generous with your money, if you show that you're not niggly, you're not a powerful person, feels confident in their wealth, feels confident in their resources, feel confident in the time that they have. And so they give that generously to other people. Being tight with your money, not wanting to pay your employees well, is a terrible, terrible quality, and it will bite you in the end. So I always tell you, maybe you don't give them credit for everything. Maybe you keep them a little bit on their toes, but you pay them well, right? You treat them well. They feel comfortable. They have food. They have an apartment. They have living expenses, okay? And you don't want to make them feel insecure about that. So being cheap with your money is very, very dangerous. It's a signal of weakness, okay? But on the other hand, when people are offering their services, they come to you saying, I want it for free, I say, forget about that. There's a ploy there. They're after something. But if somebody comes to you and says, Robert, I really want to work for you. I think I could be a really great researcher, and this is what I'm worth. And then you see that they have some experience and you try them out and you pay them, that's going to be a good relationship moving forward, right?
In short, you need skin in the game for team building, for partnerships,
Yeah.
for anything.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. I'm going to remember that.
Does it ever make sense to give away something free strategically or never?
Give me an example.
You're a brand owner and you believe in your product so much. And let's just say you're a mass market product. You say, hey, I'm going to give you this t-shirt for free.
Oh, well, people are doing that all the time. That's a brilliant marketing tool. Yeah.
So is this more from a human perspective? Because humans ultimately at the core have a dark side per what you said versus a business strategy or a product, which obviously the product has no.
Well, if you're the buyer of the product, you should be a little bit wary that they're giving it to you for free because they're going to come after you now. I gave you my book for free. Maybe I'm after something. Maybe I'm after you being kind of gentle with me and having a good interview. So you have to be a little bit wary of that free gift.
Guys, Robert gave me a beautiful limited edition 48 Laws of Power where you flick the pages. It's his face on one. What was the other face? Machiavelli, was it?
Machiavelli.
Machiavelli is beautiful. I'm gonna post that on the internet and give some distribution and
you see,
hopefully sell you some books.
Well, it's already.
You don't need to sell any books, but I'm just saying.
Okay.
I want to go into another law in conjunction with despise the free lunch. When asking for help, appealing to self-interest, never to mercy. What is kind of the biggest lesson for power behind that?
Well, if you want something from somebody who's powerful, let's say you want them to fund your movie or whatever, you go to them and you go, I kind of helped you out a little bit in the past once before, or my brother worked for you and did a really great job. Can I get some help now for my project? Almost saying you deserve it because you did something for them in the past. Terrible, terrible approach. Terrible, the worst approach. Nobody wants to feel like they owe you anything, all right? And nobody really feels much gratitude. But the smart approach is you want funding for that movie or for a project. You do some research. And I tell you, research in any business before you approach somebody for a job or anything is absolutely essential. I find out this is something that he needs. He's always been trying to break into the movie business. He hasn't been successful, okay? All right, I'm going to package this as a way where I'm going to give you credit as a producer on this picture. I'm going to let you have this perk or that perk, or you'll get to meet Sydney Sweeney or whoever it is, right? Whatever their self-interest is, whatever they need, whatever they don't have, if you think of what they need, what their interests are, what they lack, then you've got a good proposal. I'll tell you, when you're in a position of weakness, you're starting out and you're approaching powerful people, okay? What is the self-interest that kind of ties most powerful people together? They don't have enough time. They are too busy. We all know that. You know that. I know what that's like. too many things going on, too many people asking for favors, too many projects, too many things going on. Never have enough time. If you, in your proposal, and you're asking for them to do something for you, if what you're offering is to save them time, to make it so it's not so exhausting, you can organize something for them, that'll have a lot of power. That'll have a lot of impact because that's in everybody's self-interest today.
I would say save time and attention. Those are the two kind of biggest things that people want. And what's really interesting about what you just said, when you are going and appealing to somebody's self-interest, as the asker, you have the ability to control the unit economics where your ask could be pennies on a dollar for what I actually want. Case in point, an example is, you mentioned that I'd want to be in a movie. You want $2 million from me? I could say, I've always wanted to be an author. Robert, I'm a huge fan. Why don't you let me write the forward? What's the reality? How much does the forward cost? It costs you nothing. It's obviously real estate in your book. I have no economic participation, but I'm making no money. You're getting your $2 million. So you can really arbitrage making money through being super strategic in the favor. Tap into, I always say all the time that you have to understand and know like your bullets in the chamber. You're a basketball fan. Who do I know that's a basketball player that I can introduce you to?
Yeah,
stuff like that.
That's my weakness. If you wanted me to give it, you had some ask from me and you said, Robert, I can introduce you to Kobe Bryant when he was still alive or whomever. I'd be eating out of your hand. I'd be like a little puppy.
I just have to stop you guys right now. Guys, the first 20 minutes we were off camera just geeking out about basketball.
Yeah.
We need to get you on camera another time just talking about that. You need to go on like Colin Cowherd or something. You're very, very deep in basketball.
Yeah, I don't have like a detailed knowledge of basketball, but I have a very strategic knowledge of basketball. I have a feel for it.
You understand macro strategy and you knew the standings. I mean, you know what's going on.
Yeah, I do. Very much so. I don't waste a lot of my time because I have so much work. But the one thing I waste time on is reading about the NBA on all various websites, particularly all the rumors about the Lakers and everything. I'm just a total junkie for that kind of stuff.
We have to get it on camera. Prediction for the Lakers next year.
They'll probably end up like in the 4th or 5th slot in the Western Conference. They may win the first round. I don't think they'll get out of the second round. If they do, that would be, I think, quite an achievement for them. But what will be interesting is to see is what happens to the Clippers. Because I hate the Clippers. And you know what's going on right now.
I know exactly what's going on. The Clippers are the Cowboys, Robert. It doesn't even deserve for us to talk about them. They're at the bottom of the barrel.
They are.
Although if you watch the Jerry Jones documentary of the Cowboys, it's very, very, you want to talk about interaction with boldness? Jerry Jones is interaction with boldness. That guy took massive risks.
I know, but that's an example of reputation as capital because the Cowboys are worth one of the most wealthiest, what their worth would be if you sold it right now. It's one of the highest of any sports team in the world. But what's it based on? They've not won anything for 30 years or so. I don't know, almost 30 years, right? So it's all his reputation. It's all the glory from the past when he had
Irving, Emmett, Aikman, Jimmy Johnson.
Jimmy Johnson, yeah.
He should have read 48 Laws of Power when he let Jimmy Johnson go. I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay.
He should have done that. But yeah, the Cowboys star is the Yankees pinstripe. And at this point, I mean, they're on the same level as the Giants at this point. They're terrible. What's up, guys? It's Mark. Quick 15-second break. We're building a private community for operators, marketers, and creators. And in order to join that wait list, you have to sign up for the newsletter. The newsletter is going to give you alerts on all of our new content and my personal takeaways from each and every guest. Make sure you click the link at the top of the description to sign up. Thanks for watching. All right, we're going to go into the lightning round. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions and fire off. What is the single most important skill to master?
Well, the single most important skill to master is to be more focused outwardly. So a problem that you have is you're always inside yourself. You're always thinking about your needs, your emotions, your problems, things that have happened to you. Do people like me? Am I getting enough attention? That's a deadly, deadly attitude to have in business or in any venture in life. We're a social animal. So you might think that analytics and algorithms and data is what's going to drive your company. That's certainly a part of it, but the social aspect is equally, if not more important. What I mean by that is your employees, the culture of your group, the world at large, your clients, the global situation right now. These are social phenomena, right? You have to understand, you have to be so close to what people are thinking in the world today, what your employees are thinking, to what your colleagues are thinking, what your rivals are thinking. So you need to be continually laser focused outwardly on the world, on the trends, on what other people are thinking. You have to become a master observer of the social game, being able to read other people's psychology, being able to read and understand the trends that are going on in the world, where the world is going in 5 years. So get outside of all your emotions and your feelings and, oh, I'm not getting this. Oh, I'm such a victim. Oh, people don't like me. And be laser focused on other people, what they need, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. That's like a killer skill that you need to develop.
It's all about just tailoring your strategies to what's going on the outside. It has nothing to do with the inside. You have to be emotionalist, no ego. Whatever's going on the outside, you got to adjust to that. What should the real goal of your life be in your 20s? And what do most people get wrong?
For that answer, I would really recommend reading my book, Mastery, because I go into that quite deeply. So you need to think of your 20s, which is by far the best years of your life. Let's get that straight first of all. It was the best years of my life, right? It's the most exciting. You know, you're young, you look good, you got energy, you dress well, probably, I hope. The thing that you want from your 20s is you want an apprenticeship, right? You want to learn. You want learning skills. You want to learn skills, solid skills, so that by the time you turn 30, which is the critical turning point in your life, I said the 20s are your most fun. The 30s are the key part of your life, which is my key part, the late 30s. When you're 30, you want to I had fun. I had adventures. I traveled. I dated. I did everything I wanted. But I also learned things. I learned A, B, and C skills. You don't have to learn just one skill. You can learn 3 skills, 3 things that you master, that you spent 7 years going into deeply. But if you wasted your 20s, if you just had fun, if you just did whatever you wanted to, by the time you hit 30, nothing will stick together. Nothing will cohere. You've been stretched too thin. But if you're linear, laser focused, I'm just going to go to Goldman Sachs. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get paid $150,000 a year. You're not spreading yourself out. You're not learning enough skills. You're not developing yourself inwardly. Learning a skill is a skill, but learning is a skill. And in order to learn, you have to be able to put up with boredom, frustration, and tedium. So if you're able to put up, because right now, young people have it really, really bad because things are so easy for them that they don't have the patience to learn something. They just want to get onto ChatGPT. Everything is fed to them. You need to be able to put up with the tedium, the boredom that learning a skill involves. I talk in Mastery about a guy named Paul Graham, Y Combinator, etc. Paul was one of the earliest people to get into AI back in the late 70s. He was a coder. He was really into computing and hacking. He went to MIT, I believe, and studied computer programming, got his master's, his PhD, whatever. But then he got bored with it. He got tired of it. It just became monotonous to him. So he always was interested in painting and design. So he left New York and he went to Italy and he enrolled in an art school and he learned painting in Florence for like a year. He came back to New York. He was a painter in a loft. And he heard on the radio that Netscape, which was the newest hot thing, was going to try and maybe use the internet to sell things. Now, you might laugh at that, but at the early days of the internet, people didn't sell things on the internet, right? It wasn't a marketplace. And light bulb goes on his head, I like painting, but I'm poor. I'm living in this loft. I have no money, but I know computer programming. I have a great feel for it, but I also know about painting. I know about design. I know what looks good. I have the skill set to make an incredible website, which will be the first website where you can actually build something and sell products for other businesses to build off of, right? He went and did that. And then I think it was Yahoo or somebody like that bought his company out for like $10 million. And that was the start of things. From that, he built always upward. But he developed 2 incredible, unrelated skills, computer programming design and painting. And then he combined them into creating this new company.
Yeah, I think one thing that you touched on with Paul Graham that I found super, super interesting was the combination of kind of art and programming. For people out there listening, I'm on the back end of my 30s. I think it's very important to understand and know you must pick the right skills because there's compounding effects where there comes a certain age, which I'm very curious what age you think, where if you've invested 10, 15 years of your life to learn X skill, it is not smart to put that skill and just throw it away. You should probably utilize some sort of element in that and make a new concoction of using that skill in something new.
Exactly.
When is that age? When do you think someone, it's kind of counterintuitive to the Gary V where you could start your life at 60, 70, 80 years old. When do you think you need to understand and know this is what I'm going to do with my life?
Well, everyone's different. And it's good to have an idea of what you want and what you love when you're 18 or when you're in your college years, if you go to college. It's good to have a sense of what you love and what connects to you. But to be a specific project, a specific business, you want, if you're too single-minded and you're 23 and you know exactly what you want, you won't have adventures. You won't have that freedom, that fluidity to learn different things, okay? So I would say generally around the age of 30, in your 30s, is when everything should start coming together. Now, things can go up and down. They can have a trajectory. I often think of Steve Jobs. So he's like Paul Graham. He had a background in design because really what Steve Jobs was a great designer. He had computing skills, but not on the level of Wozniak or people like that.
Calligraphy classes he took as well too.
Huh?
He took calligraphy classes as well. He was an artist.
He was an artist. His real interest was in the look of technology and the design of things, how things felt, how they felt in your hand, how they looked. Okay? And so the reason I pick him out is your career can go like this, like this, like this, and it goes up, but there are going to be downturns. And how you handle those downturns are going to be extremely important. So nobody has a straight line up. So he has this design background. He starts the first iteration with Wozniak. He has Apple. They have success, but he's not good with people. He knows that. He admits that. And he burned himself out. And the company was brought in other people, and he was eventually fired, right? So he's going like this, and now his career is going like that. But he didn't sink down, right? He kept at it. He started another company called Next, which was actually a very interesting company if you look at the computers he was making. But it failed. It was a failure, okay? So it's like this, it's going down, it's going a little bit up, now it's going down again. And then he's brought back to Apple because Apple isn't doing so well back in, I believe, the late 90s. He learned all of these lessons in the meantime. He's in his 30s then?
Probably late 30s.
Late 30s, okay. He's learned all these lessons. He's learned that he can't be an asshole anymore like he was early on. He learned what failed at Apple, why Next failed. He was set up for a brilliant, brilliant comeback, okay? So I guess the point I'm saying is your career is never going to be straight up. If it's straight up, you're in trouble. Your failures, if you're bold and you try things and it fails, you've learned lessons. Don't let it sink you. Let it be a lesson for your next project and have another iteration and go in a slightly different direction, as he did. He realized he couldn't start his own company, so he went back to Apple, but he completely revolutionized it and made it according to his own image.
I want to fire a couple more questions. You said money isn't just money. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, what is money? I mean, think of it. It's a human invention that we have created. Now, why do I say that? Because money is pure psychology, right? I talked about Elon Musk and how he turned, like alchemy, he turned a company that was nothing into powerful. He attracted all this money because of attention, because he understood the attention game. He understood the psychology, the psychological element that translated into money. You look at the crash of 2008 and all of these people going into these derivatives and these real estate investments, right? Completely irrational. As looking back, it was like, what were people thinking? It wasn't based on anything real. It was based on a mob mentality, on lemmings going over the hill, all believing that because other people were signing off on it, I'm going to sign off of it. which is how bubbles always happen. Bubbles are classic examples of money as pure psychology. Some people now are speculating that AI is going to turn into a bit of a bubble because so many companies are throwing billions of dollars into AI right now, and it's not really paying off. It's not translating into productivity. It's not translating into profits. It could be a bubble. But I'm saying people follow trends. They put their money according to what they think is going to be good. Look at the stock market right now. The stock market is pure psychology. People believe something is happening. They believe in the future. They're optimistic. They're bullish. Well, let's invest. At a slight turn in psychology, they become bearish. It's pure psychology. You have to understand that. I don't know why that seems so strange. It seems so obvious to me.
Seems like psychology, persuasion, reputation, and attention kind of concoction of all of those things is
but all of that you just mentioned is all about human psychology. How do you get attention? How do you market things? You have to understand the psychology of people. You could have the best product in the world. You put all the money into it. But you don't know how to market it? What good does it do? Marketing is pure psychology.
Love that. Last question before we get into the final round. Which strategy of seduction is most effective in business, and what are the risks of misusing it?
What I wanted to do in the art of seduction was to show that seduction is a bit of psychology. It's a strategy. What ties all seductions together is people are resistant to you. Nobody is naturally open to another stranger, right? Seduction is getting those walls down, getting to crumble, getting to lower down to a point where they are going to maybe do what you want, where they're interested in your project, where they're interested in following, where they want to be involved with you in some way. It's the art of bringing all of their defenses down. And if you do it too directly, if you hit them with the hard sell, the walls just go back up because we're all wary of people who will give us the hard sell. But if you come from the side and you do the soft sell and you're gentle and you do like a viral approach, like everybody else is buying my product. I don't need to go out there and market it and have advertising. And most often, creating those kind of viral effects is by far the strongest marketing tool that you can have. And I have a chapter in that in the art of seduction. So you have to understand that people don't naturally want to buy your product. They don't want to listen to your music. They don't want to read your books. They're not interested in you. How do you seduce them into doing that is the name of the game.
It's a book on marketing. All right, last 3 questions we got here. I've had an amazing time. Favorite book or podcast and why?
Oh, God. All right, Machiavelli's The Prince. And my favorite podcast? Well, I can tell you the most fun I've had on a podcast that I've been on. I don't watch a lot of podcasts because I'm way too busy. But I had the best time on Theo Vaughn's podcast, and he's so much fun to watch.
That was a loose one? You guys got loose?
Very much so. And
we'll pop that up here.
I can always watch him because he's really interesting. He's somebody who's very unpredictable. You never know exactly where he's going to come from. And that's what makes him such a great interviewer. And so if you're out there, Theo, I really enjoyed your podcast.
Love that. Entrepreneur or brand that you want to give flowers to and why?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I mean, I'm really into health and fitness. Obviously, I had a stroke, so it's even a little bit more urgent from me. So there's some companies out there, some startups that have done really well. So I'm thinking of a company called Momentous.
Great supplement company.
Great supplement company. And I'll tell you what the most important skill is in the business world. We talked about it earlier, but there's something else, which is everything now is so inhuman. You can never talk to anybody over the phone or wherever, say you're dissatisfied with their product or something went wrong, right? They put you through this maze like a rat so that you hang up, so that you never get to have to talk to a human being. Everything has to be online. There's no feedback. There's no relationship between the client and the product, people selling the product. And we all feel so frustrated with it. Everybody's dealt with that. Everybody hates it. Sometimes you just want to talk to somebody, want to hear them. Companies that give you feedback that are open to interacting with you, yeah, it costs money. Yeah, instead of farming it out to some people in Pakistan who are on a phone bank answering you, it's actually somebody in Texas on a phone who's you can understand, who's telling you, how they can write it. Well, Momentous is that kind of company. Great products, really well managed, really well put together, some of the best supplements that you can find, and they're friendly. They're open to you. They interact with you. I'd send some flowers to them.
From an ethics perspective too, for people listening, I forgot what the stack was. It was to boost your testosterone. It was Tungat Ali and something else. They were doing $3, $4, $5 million on one of these products. Their customers loved it.
Who's this?
Momentous.
Oh.
And they took the product off the shelf because they couldn't get behind the science on it. So they had a product that was absolutely booming. Their customers loved it, and they took it off the shelf. So
that's an excellent sign. Yeah, they've got a conscience. They're smart. They're strategic. They understand, and I think they've got a great future.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your next book, Sublime? We're hoping that you finish by the end of the year. It's fourth quarter for Robert, guys. He's got one more chapter left to go. He's staying with us for a couple hours now. I appreciate this. Tell everybody about your next book, Sublime.
I'd say that means that's the fourth quarter with about 7.5 minutes to go. And I'm driving towards the end zone. And hopefully I don't fumble. This is a non-business book. Let's be honest with it. But there is the chapter I just wrote has something to do with the business world. The chapter I just wrote is about willpower and resilience and how important that is to be able to deal with pain, suffering, and adversity and challenges, and how that makes you stronger and a better person, and how that is a sublime power in the human animal, to be so resilient where nothing could beat you down, where you allow yourself to feel the pain and you grow from it. Because people nowadays are so avoidant of any kind of conflict, of any kind of difficulty. So that chapter, I think, will have a lot of relevance to entrepreneurs. But in general, I hate to use the word, but it's a little bit more of a spiritual book in that 7 years ago now, I came this close to dying. I had a stroke. I was driving my car in Los Angeles. My wife had me pull over. I didn't want to pull over. I was going to keep driving. She forced it, and she called an ambulance. She saw my face. The right side of my face was just falling. Something was really wrong with me. I didn't know. I was like, everything's fine. In that split second where she didn't panic and she called 911, she saved my life. She basically saved my life. And they came quickly. And so I came this close to dying or this close to being brain dead. Now, that can have a deep effect on a person. And I had always been meaning to write a book on the sublime. And what I mean by the sublime is, I like to compare it to a circle. And that circle is what we're all supposed to think and do. It's kind of a limiting factor where in our particular culture, these are the thoughts that you have. These are the behaviors that you do. These are the values that you have. This is the things that you conform to, right? And outside that circle is everything that you're not supposed to do, everything you're not supposed to think, everything that's different, that's strange, that's weird, that's not normal. That is the sublime. And I'm trying to lure you outside of the circle in these 12 different directions to experience something beyond your normal limits, beyond your normal boundaries, that's going to shake your brain up and make you realize that the world you thought was this way is actually this way. You don't know what reality is. You have this image, but things are much stranger, much weirder, much more sublime and awesome than you imagine. It's a book to shake you out of your complacency, to shake you out of this idea that you know what the world is like, and to make you realize you're ignorant, that the world is mysterious and beautiful for being mysterious. So each chapter is outside that. And the ultimate chapter, the 12th chapter, the one I'm writing now, is about death. It's about death is sort of the ultimate limit that we all face. But to be able to experience it, to understand what may lie on the other side, what it is the ultimate sublime experience, right? Because we don't know. Nobody knows what happens to us after we die. Yeah, we think we just decay, we just die in the ground. But people have these called near-death experiences. They're very strange, they're very weird. What happens to our consciousness as we die? And so because I lived through that, it's not like an intellectual thing to me. I lived with death being inside my body, with me feeling a creeping sensation of everything decaying and softening inside. I have a different relationship to death than most people do. So I want to communicate that in the last chapter. So that's sort of what my new book is about.
That was an amazing trailer for your next book. Is The Sublime, is that your last dance? Is the last book?
Well, if I don't have a heart attack or something, there'll be other books. But I can tell you this, I'm in my 60s. I'm actually in the latter half of my 60s, if you could believe it. I don't have the energy that I used to have. I'm slowing down. And the other thing is I can't type. My left hand is pretty useless. So I have to handwrite everything.
Wow.
I used to take long walks or go for these long swims or go mountain biking to get my mind off my work and to stir up new ideas. Can't do any of that. I'm just trapped in my room. It's been so exhausting to write this book like that. I can't do it anymore. So my next book is going to be quicker and smaller and slimmer and easier. I know I keep saying that every time, but I have to I just can't handle it anymore. The stress.
I have one more question for you that is kind of a cliche question. I've never asked it. I've never wanted to ask it, but with you specifically, I'm just deeply curious. What would Robert Greene tell his younger self? What's the advice that you would give yourself? I feel like you have a lot of wisdom and you've lived multiple lives and recreated yourself.
Well, I would say, Robert, don't worry. Everything's going to work out for the best. You're doing the right thing. So my philosophy in life, if I had to say I have one philosophy, it's called amor fati, which is Latin for love of fate. And what that means is everything happens for a reason. Even the bad things that happen to you have a purpose to them if you know how to handle it. If you embrace the bad stuff that happens to you, nothing can ever hurt you or harm you. You learn from every bad experience. So getting fired or losing my job from that woman that was kind of bothering me, I learned great lessons for it. It made me stronger. Having people tell me when I was 25, Robert, you're not a good writer. You're not going to end up being a writer. You should go to business school. It made me stronger. It made me tougher. It made me more resilient. It made me learn. Everything is a learning experience. Nothing is wasted if you have this philosophy. It's something that the Stoics and Ryan Holiday talks a lot about. His book, The Obstacle is the Way, brilliant book.
Great book.
But nothing is just meaningless. Everything has a purpose behind it. And so all the bad stuff that happened to me when I was in my 20s, all the feelings I had of being lost, they ended up having a purpose because I used it that way. So I would have told myself, don't worry, Robert, don't be despondent, don't despair. Or despair, it's fine to feel despair because everything in the end will work out. It's all, as I tell other people, my motto in life besides amor fati is, it's all material. Everything that happens is material for me to use in my books, for my mind to feed off of. So I wouldn't have told myself, actually, I wouldn't tell myself anything. I would have shut up and said, just go on, do your life. Don't listen to me, Robert, you're fine.
That just took a hard turn there. I appreciate you, man. You're a living legend. As I mentioned off camera in the beginning, this is one of the first books that I recommend people to read. Good to Great by Jim Collins and 48 Laws of Power are the two. Thank you so much for coming and taking the time out of the day. Where can everybody find you? Where's the best place for them to find you online?
Well, I keep quoting I think my website is still powerseductionandwar.com, the and spelled out, powerseductionandwar.com. And there you'll find links to X, to Instagram, to TikTok, and to YouTube. We just went over 2 million subscribers on YouTube, thanks to Stanley. So you can find me on all of those platforms, or you can visit that website. I also have a newsletter that you can get, but you'll find all the information there.
Amazing. Guys, I'm going to link that in the description below. Robert, I appreciate you, my man.
Thank you so much, Mark. I had a great time.
What's up, guys? If you guys got this far in the episode, I would assume that you enjoyed it. If you got any value, it would mean the world if you hit the subscribe button, give it a like, post a comment, tell a friend. We could keep going bigger guests, bigger locations, more value. See you in the next episode.